Welcome to Heart of a Soldier, where we honor the brave stories of those who've served. I'm your host, and today I'm sharing a story about true heroism, not the kind that comes with medals or parades, but the quiet courage that emerges when everything seems lost. This is the story of a man who fought 2 wars, one overseas and one within himself. Sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought on foreign soil, but in the depths of our own hearts. This is the story of the silent hero. Marcus Thompson woke up at 5 a.m., drenched in cold sweat. It was that dream again. That damned day in Kabul. The sound of the explosion, his buddies screaming. He sat on the edge of his bed in his small apartment in Cedar Falls, Montana, a town so quiet you could hear your own heartbeat at night. 3 years had passed since he'd returned from Afghanistan. 3 years since the IED took his squad. 3 years since he'd been the only one to walk away from that burning Humvee. The doctors called it survivor's guilt. Marcus called it hell. He walked to the kitchen, his left leg still stiff from the shrapnel wounds. The coffee maker was already set from the night before. Routine was everything now. As he waited for the coffee to brew, he stared out the window at Main Street. Cedar Falls was the kind of place where nothing ever happened, which was exactly why he'd chosen it. His phone buzzed. Another missed call from his sister Sarah in Denver. She'd been calling every week for months, worried about him living alone in the middle of nowhere. But Marcus couldn't handle the city anymore. Too many sounds, too many people, too many reminders of the chaos he'd left behind. At exactly 7:30 a.m., Marcus began his daily walk around town. Same route, same time, every single day. Past the old diner where Mrs. Henderson always waved from behind the counter. Past the school where children played in the yard. Past the fire station where Chief Williams usually sat on his porch reading the newspaper. Exactly 7:30 a.m., Marcus began his daily walk around town. Same route, same time, every single day. Past the old diner where Mrs. Henderson always waved from behind the counter. Past the school where children played in the yard. Past the fire station where Chief Williams usually sat on his porch reading the newspaper. But today, something was different. The air tasted metallic, and there was a faint smell of smoke. Marcus's combat-trained senses immediately went on high alert. His heart started racing, and for a moment, he was back in Afghanistan, scanning for threats. Get it together, Thompson, he muttered to himself, using the breathing techniques his therapist had taught him. But the smell was getting stronger. Then he heard it. The fire station's alarm piercing, the morning calm. Chief Williams came running out of his house, still putting on his gear. Marcus, he called out. Thank God you're here. We've got a situation at the Riverside Elementary School. Gas leak caused a fire, and it's spreading fast. Half my crew is at a training exercise in Billings, and the other half is dealing with that warehouse fire on the east side of town. Marcus felt his throat tighten. A school. Children. The smell of burning fuel. Every nightmare he'd ever had seemed to be converging on this moment. I can't, he whispered. But Chief Williams was already climbing into the fire truck. Marcus, you're the only one here with real emergency training. Those kids need us. The fire at Riverside Elementary had started in the basement boiler room and was climbing through the ventilation system. Black smoke poured from the windows of the 2-story building. Parents were already gathering behind the police barriers, some crying, some shouting for their children. Marcus stood frozen at the edge of the parking lot. The smell of burning fuel brought him right back to that day in Kabul. He could hear his sergeant's voice. Thompson, get those civilians out of that building. But this time, there was no sergeant, no backup. Just him and his demons. The children are trapped on the 2nd floor. Chief Williams shouted over the noise of the sirens. The main stairwell is blocked by debris, and the fire escape on the east side is damaged. We need someone small enough to get through the window and guide them out. Mrs. Patterson, the school principal, ran up to them. There are 23 children and 2 teachers in classroom to be. The smoke is getting thicker, and some of the younger ones are panicking. Marcus closed his eyes. He could hear children crying, just like he'd heard crying in that village outside Kabul before everything went wrong, before the bomb, before his world exploded. But then something else cut through his panic. A child's voice, high and scared, calling, "Help us, please, help us." When Marcus opened his eyes, he saw a little girl's face pressed against a second-story window. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old. Her eyes were wide with fear, but she was trying to be brave. She reminded him of Amira, the little Afghan girl who used to wave at their convoy every morning. Amira, who died when the bomb went off. "Give me your gear," Marcus said quietly to Chief Williams. "What? Your gear?" "Now." Marcus's voice was steadier than it had been in 3 years. Chief Williams didn't hesitate. He helped Marcus into the fire suit and oxygen mask. "The ladder truck is positioning on the west side. You'll have maybe 10 minutes before the smoke gets too thick." Marcus tested the radio. "Copy that, Chief." As he approached the building, every step felt like walking through quicksand. The smoke, the heat, the sound of breaking glass, it was all wrong. It was all too familiar. But that little girl was still at the window, and now she was coughing. Marcus climbed the ladder with mechanical precision. His military training kicked in, overriding his panic. At the window, he could see into the classroom. 23 children huddled in the far corner with their teachers, Miss Rodriguez and Mr. Bailey. The smoke was getting thicker by the minute. "Hey there, sweetheart," he said to the little girl at the window, keeping his voice calm. "What's your name?" "Emma," she whispered. "Well, Emma, I'm Marcus, and I'm going to get you and your friends out of here, okay? But I need you to be my helper. Can you do that?" Emma nodded, and for the first time in 3 years, Marcus felt something other than fear. He felt purpose. Getting into the classroom was the easy part. Getting 23 terrified children organized was another story entirely. The smoke was getting thicker, and Marcus could hear the fire spreading below them. "Listen up, everyone," Marcus said, removing his mask so they could see his face. "I'm a soldier, and soldiers know how to handle tough situations. But I need all of you to be soldiers with me today, okay?" Miss Rodriguez, a young teacher who couldn't have been older than 25, was trying to keep the children calm, but Marcus could see she was terrified. "How are we going to get them all out?" she whispered. Marcus looked at the window. The ladder would only hold one person at a time, safely. 23 kids plus 2 adults. It would take time they didn't have. But then he remembered something his sergeant used to say. "One mission, one step at a time." "Thompson, you can't save the world, but you can save the person right in front of you." "We're going to make a game of it," Marcus announced. "I need the bravest soldier to go first and show everyone else how it's done." "Who thinks they're brave enough?" A little boy named Tyler raised his hand. He was maybe 8 years old, with thick glasses and a superhero t-shirt. "I can be brave," he said in a shaky voice. "Outstanding, Soldier Tyler. You're going to climb out this window with me, and then you're going to wait at the bottom and cheer for all your friends as they come down. Can you handle that mission?" Tyler nodded solemnly. One by one, Marcus helped each child out the window and down the ladder. Emma, the brave little girl. Tyler, the superhero fan. Sophia, who was worried about her pet hamster in the classroom next door. Each child had a name, a story, a life that mattered. With each rescue, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt since Afghanistan. He was making a difference. He was saving people instead of watching them die. By the time Marcus got to the last 3 children and 2 teachers, the smoke was so thick he could barely see. The fire had reached the first floor directly below them, and the heat was becoming unbearable. "The floor is getting unstable." Chief Williams's voice crackled through the radio. "You need to get out of there now." But there was still little Jenny, the smallest girl in the class, who was too scared to move, and Miss Rodriguez, who refused to leave without all her students, and Mr. Bailey, who had twisted his ankle and was having trouble walking. Marcus looked at the window. The ladder was still there, but he could see the fire department was preparing to move it. They were running out of time. "Miss Rodriguez, you go first with Jenny. I'll help, Mr. Bailey. I'm not leaving without." "That's an order," Marcus said, and something in his voice, the authority of a soldier who'd seen real combat, made her listen. As Miss Rodriguez carried Jenny to safety, Marcus helped Mr. Bailey to the window. The teacher's face was gray with pain and smoke inhalation. "I don't think I can make it," Mr. Bailey wheezed. Marcus thought about Sergeant Martinez, who'd said the same thing after the IED blast. Marcus had tried to carry him to safety, but there hadn't been enough time. The second explosion had taken them both. Martinez didn't make it. Marcus did. But not this time. This time was going to be different. You're going to make it, Marcus said firmly. Because I'm not leaving anyone behind. Not today. Just as Marcus was helping Mr. Bailey toward the window, they heard a sound that made his blood freeze. A child crying. They'd missed someone. In the corner of the room, hidden behind an overturned desk, was a little boy Marcus hadn't seen before. He was maybe 5 years old. Probably a kindergartner who'd gotten separated from his class in the chaos. The ladder was already moving away from the building. The fire had reached the second floor. They had maybe 2 minutes before the whole structure became unstable. Marcus faced an impossible choice. Get Mr. Bailey out now, and hope the fire department could somehow reach the boy in time, or risk all 3 of their lives trying to save everyone. For a moment, he was back in Afghanistan, facing the same impossible choice. Save who you can, or risk losing everyone trying to save them all. But then the little boy looked up at him with eyes full of trust, and Marcus knew there was no choice at all. Change of plans. He radioed to Chief Williams. I need that ladder back. We've got one more. Marcus, the building's about to collapse. Get out now. Negative, Chief. I'm not leaving anyone behind. Marcus helped Mr. Bailey sit by the window, then went to get the little boy. What's your name, buddy? Danny, the boy whispered. Well, Danny, I'm Marcus, and I promise I'm going to get you out of here. But I need you to be really brave, okay? As he picked up Danny, Marcus felt the floor shift beneath his feet. Time was up. The ladder wasn't coming back. The fire had spread too far, and it wasn't safe for the fire department to reposition their equipment. Marcus was on his own with a injured teacher and a 5-year-old boy. But Marcus had been in worse situations. In Afghanistan, he'd once had to evacuate wounded civilians from a building under enemy fire. No backup, no air support, just him and his training. He looked around the classroom and spotted something. The emergency fire rope that was supposed to be used for exactly this situation. It was mounted by the window on the opposite side of the room from where the ladder had been. Mr. Bailey, can you handle going down a rope? The teacher looked at the thin emergency line. Do I have a choice? Not really. Marcus secured the rope and tested it. It would hold their weight, but just barely. He'd have to lower Mr. Bailey first, then Danny, then rappel down himself. But as he was helping Mr. Bailey prepare for the descent, Danny tugged on his sleeve. What about the hamster? What hamster, buddy? Danny pointed to a small cage in the corner of the room. Inside was a tiny brown hamster, Sophia's pet, that she'd been worried about earlier. Under normal circumstances, Marcus would have told Danny that they couldn't risk their lives for a hamster. But these weren't normal circumstances. This was about more than just following protocol. This was about keeping promises, about not leaving anyone behind, about being the person he'd always wanted to be, instead of the broken soldier he'd become. We'll get him to, Marcus said. Getting Mr. Bailey down the rope took precious minutes. The teacher's injured ankle made it difficult, but Marcus coached him through it, drawing on his experience training new recruits. When Mr. Bailey finally reached the ground, the crowd below cheered. Danny was next. Marcus fashioned a makeshift harness out of his belt and some rope, securing the little boy against his chest. The hamster cage was strapped to his back. Hold on tight, Danny. We're going for a ride. As they started their descent, Marcus felt a familiar calm settle over him. This was what he'd been trained for. This was what he was good at. Not the nightmares. Not the guilt. Not the endless replaying of that day in Kabul. This. Saving people. Halfway down, Marcus heard a groaning sound from above. The fire had weakened the building's structure more than anyone had realized. They had maybe 30 seconds before the rope anchor point failed. Marcus, Chief Williams shouted from below. The building's coming down. Marcus looked up and saw flames breaking through the classroom windows. He looked down and saw the faces of everyone watching, the other children he'd saved. Their parents, the firefighters, the whole town of Cedar Falls, holding its breath. In that moment, suspended between earth and sky, between safety and danger, between his past failures and his present choice, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Peace. He wasn't the soldier who'd failed to save his squad in Afghanistan. He was the man who'd saved 24 children and 2 teachers in Cedar Falls, Montana. He was exactly who he was supposed to be. They reached the ground just as the second floor of Riverside Elementary School collapsed in a shower of sparks and debris. The crowd rushed forward, pulling Marcus, Danny, and the hamster cage away from the falling embers. Danny was crying, but he was safe. The hamster was shaken but unharmed. And Marcus was sitting on the ground, staring up at the burning building, feeling something he'd almost forgotten existed. Pride. Chief Williams knelt down beside him. You did it, son. You saved them all. Marcus nodded, but he couldn't speak. The emotions he'd been holding back for 3 years were finally breaking free. Relief, exhaustion, grief for his lost squad mates, and something new, forgiveness for himself. Miss Rodriguez appeared with all 23 of her students. They were wrapped in blankets, being checked by paramedics, but they were all looking at Marcus with something like awe. You're a real hero, Emma said, the brave little girl who'd been the first face he'd seen at the window. No, Marcus said softly. You were all heroes today. You stayed calm, you listened, you took care of each other. That's what real heroes do. But even as he said it, Marcus realized something had changed inside him. The nightmares might not disappear overnight. The guilt might not vanish completely. But today had shown him that he wasn't defined by the worst day of his life. He was defined by what he chose to do with the days that came after. As the sun set over Cedar Falls that evening, Marcus sat on his apartment steps, watching the town return to normal. The children were home with their families. The teachers were recovering. The hamster was safely reunited with Sophia. His phone buzzed. It was his sister Sarah, calling as she did every week. For the first time in 3 years, Marcus answered. Sarah, yeah, it's me. Listen, I've been thinking. Maybe it's time I came to visit. Marcus Thompson had fought in Afghanistan. He'd survived an IED blast. He'd battled PTSD and survivor's guilt. But his greatest victory wasn't on any foreign battlefield. It was in a small classroom in Montana, where he learned that sometimes being a hero isn't about the medals you earn or the recognition you receive. Sometimes, being a hero is just about showing up when people need you most, even when you're fighting your own battles. Sometimes being a hero means choosing to save others when you're still learning how to save yourself. And sometimes the most important battle you'll ever fight is the one that helps you remember who you really are. Thank you for joining me for another story from Heart of a Soldier. Until next time, remember that heroes aren't born. They're forged in the moments when ordinary people make extraordinary choices. Stay strong and keep fighting the good fight.